Hello everyone, Voodoo here, and I'm here today to talk about Void Demon Hunter, or Void Man as the Discord has called it. So, Void Demon Hunter is a thing that I'm like 99.95% sure is going to happen, and is going to be revealed at Gamescom in August. I believe it's on the 19th. So it's less than a month away from now, but we'll finally know, and I'll do a video. We'll have the pog face on the thumbnail. It'll go crazy. Now the thing is, I've kind of been like contemplating what it could look like. Obviously we've had testing, we've been able to test in the PTR with the quest chain. I talked a little bit about this in another video, but I wanted to do a bit more of a focused video, not just proving it's real, but just talking about what I think it could be with like some research into the game and stuff like that. And I have some good ideas, pretty bare bones. Obviously I'm not a game designer. I'm not going to go in and be like, oh, it'll have this ability to do this much damage and do this, but more like a general broad term, looking at like maybe what things could be there, some general ideas for a concept and stuff like that. So with that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, push us towards 15,000 subscribers, and let's get on to it. Okay, so obviously the very first thing we have to talk about is going to be the boss fight. Now, I do want to say that the boss fight, if we look at what the Vengeance Demon Hunter and what the Havoc Demon Hunter do, their abilities don't directly translate one-to-one to what the specs do. They definitely are inspired by the abilities, right? Like there's an I-Beam ability, which does similar things to I-Beam with like some twists to it. There's the Blade Dance one, which is the same, does similar idea with some twists. Hunt, which does similar idea with some twists, and then the things that Vengeance has. Although Sigil of Chains, the Vengeance Demon Hunter boss actually does have, which is just a straight one-to-one copy. But everything else is like similar with like a bit of a twist. The reason I'm saying that is because Adaris himself, or themselves, I believe they use gender neutral terminology in the game, but we're gonna use him, I guess, for now, because I'm not really sure. So in the game, he uses consume over and over and over again, despite having two glaives, right? And the reason I'm talking about this is because people were kind of thinking it's a range spec because of that. Now, I don't think this is true. One, if you look at Havoc and Vengeance and just like Demon Hunter in general, it doesn't really make sense to be a range spec. We do have some ranged elements. I believe meta form of Illidan way back in Warcraft 3 was a ranged, like you could do some range damage. There's the thing where you fly up in the air and shoot down, and there's Illidan, obviously in Black Temple, where he flies up and shoots down. But I think the chain casting consume thing is more so based on the fact that it would be weird if they had three bosses mailing you as a tank, and would probably force into a 3-tank design space, which they really don't like doing, especially forcing. Sometimes they do it as like a strat thing to mix it up, where it's possible you can do that, but they hate having that be the number one thing. I think looking at all the abilities like that aren't mirroring one-to-one, seeing he still has melee slashes and attacks and stuff like that, I just don't think it makes a ton of sense for it to be a range spec. It also will not be a healer or a debuff based like support spec. Throw that out the window. It'll be some kind of damage dealer. 8.9% certain it's melee. There's a small chance it's range, but we're gonna assume it's melee because I think it makes much more sense for Demon Hunter. So with that out of the way, what can we actually get from the boss fight itself? So there's a few things. The one thing I think is that these names are going to stay. We might not see the abilities. So Consumer's Ire is one of them. This is kind of what he does with Consume. It's this big red eye icon. And this is kind of a dot. So I do believe there would be some kind of dot focus mechanic here with the Void Demon Hunter. If we look at Void, only other Void spec in the game, which is Shadow Priest, it is dot based. It's not crazy to have dots be related to this. Void is all about consuming and destroying and crumbling to nothing, and that is a very like dot focused kind of ethos. So I can see Consumer's Ire being that. I could also see it being kind of the beam replacement because it like kind of chain cast consume, which is, I don't like that motion I did, but it's like a bit of like a suck. So maybe instead of a beam where you're blasting things out, you have consume where you suck things into you and deal damage that way, right? Like you're consuming the enemy to deal damage to them instead of blasting them with fell energy to deal damage to them. So I can see it working in one of those two ways. Other big thing is Void Step, which I think is a huge thing where he just teleports across the room. This, I believe, will be the Fell Rush, Infernal Jump, Infernal Strike, I believe it's actually called, replacement for Void Man Demon Hunter, where you just blink. It's just a blink, which is going to be very, very powerful, of course, for a melee, but just in general, blinks are really, really strong. Only mages have blinks. I guess rogues kind of have Shadow Step, and then some specs of Evoker have access to a blink with a certain hero talent tree. But otherwise, blinks are very rare in the game, and they're incredibly powerful because not only are they good movement, but they actually phase you through things, right? You can blink through damage on the ground, blink through some obstacles, blink through mechanics. It's very, very strong and makes a lot of sense again for a void based thing, especially because like if we look at other void things in the game, like Void Elf, their racial allows them to teleport through space, and I believe Void Step would do something very similar. And then finally there's the slashing moves. He has Hungering Slash and Eradicate, which are basically giant void size or void clones he summons that just slash in front of him. Again, I could see these being some form of AoE slash they do. Think of like a Blade Dance, think of like a Soul Cleave, right, where you're summoning a scythe or a void scythe, or doing some kind of big wide slash with like Eradicate with like shadow clones, kind of like Subtlety Road does with their clones, or like, you know, just like with a big void slash. So I think this is kind of like some core parts, well, some mechanics will have with it, right? You'll have some kind of dot or consume, like off of consumer's ire, some form of slashes with Hungry Slash and Eradicate, which sounds like abilities that you could use. And I think it'll have some kind of thing to do with souls, because it's very much about consumption and like absorbing the essence of your foes and like gaining power that way, which we'll touch on a bit later in the video when we talk about hero talents. So that's kind of it for the boss fight. Again, like he doesn't have a ton of things. He sucks up souls in intermission. Again, more on that like consuming, like gaining power through consumption kind of way. But I don't think Void is going to be everything, and there's a reason for that. Okay, so the big reason why I don't think it's going to be like just a Void based spec is because of the quest chain we have. So there's a quest chain in here, which you should be seeing footage of in the background, which also you should do the first week. Another video on that later. But basically you help this Void Elf and this Demon Hunter. The Demon Hunter becomes the boss in the instance. You are helping the Void Elf help the Demon Hunter, because the Void Elf wants to learn how to be a Demon Hunter. The Demon Hunter wants to learn how to consume Void to fight the Void guys, basically. He even says at one point, you know, Illidan consumed Fel to fight the demons. I'm gonna tame my rage and do the same thing with Void to fight the Shadow Guard or whatever. So there's a parallel there that Blizzard themselves are drawing between what Illidan did a long time ago to fight the Burning Legion and what this random guy is doing now to fight the Shadow Guard and the forces of evil and the Void and whatever. So that right there, huge W towards being a Void Demon Hunter. But through the quest line, you help this guy, and eventually, you know, it is working. He's being infused with the Void, but he's like too much of an egoed head and is like, oh my god, I can do this, I can control the Void, where our Void Elf person who we're helping is like, no, let it wash over you instead. And he doesn't, goes crazy, yada yada yada. So I think that right there is kind of the inflection point where she's gonna learn, because she already knows how to, like, you know, let the Void wash over you and more channel it rather than like control it, and he's kind of just being an asshole. But throughout that quest line, at the end you go back to Void Magister Umbrix, the Void Elf lead guy, with the Demon Hunter, and the quest bugged for me on the PTR. I couldn't see the final conversation, but shout out to Cloudy from the Demon Hunter Discord, who was able to at one point. We do know that they talk, and in this conversation she talks and is like, I think with more time or a better teacher, I can harness this and master it. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, okay, this isn't going to just be a Void based spec, because when she says better teacher, there's 2 or 3 people that come to mind. The big two are Venari and Locust Walker. And aside from Locust Walker, it's Illyria, who was taught by Locust Walker, which is basically the same thing. But basically Venari and Locust Walker. So we're going to break that down in 2 parts. So Venari is, for those who don't know, she was the main broker that we encountered in Shadowlands. She did all the Maw stuff. She was a pretty important character in that story for everyone who played it, I guess. And she brings us to Tazavesh, and I think is one of the reasons why we're able to actually like get there. And then throughout the story of the new expansion, we find out that she was one of the people who blew up Koresh in the first place, and was a very important person along with Locust Walker. So Venari is an ethereal, a broker, and we don't know much about what brokers can do. We have a few fights in WoW's history. Zymox, which is mostly like portal based, and then she's just stealing stuff. But more specifically, we have the 2 fights inside of Streets of Tazavesh. The first one is against I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's against like the slashy boss that cuts it into 4 quarters, where you teleport around, and they're kind of like a ninja, right? Like they move quick, they teleport around, they do a big wide circle around them, like called Shuri. They have quick strike. So very much like a fast-paced, moving around the battlefield, using technology to teleport around, using technology to like harness things. So kind of like a technological kind of angle. And then we also have the final person, Soleil from Soleil's Gambit, who does like a bunch of like energy-based Titany artifact stuff, right? You have like energy discharge, you have those Titan artifacts that bounce around, you have again a lot of those like Tazavesh kind of portals. I don't know if people know what I'm talking about, but there's like a specific style of portal they have with like a white middle and like yellow gold trim pieces. So I think that's going to be something that could revolve around here. Is also the first boss of Tazavesh Streets, just a big guy with lots of swords. So there is like that technology there where like you could use Tazavesh bombs, energy weapons, teleportation materials they have to incorporate with the Void, because obviously, you know, they're in the Void, they know about it. But I think ethereals are obviously a much more like plausible one, because Locust Walker teaches the Void, he allows Illyria to control it and become the first Void elf. Illyria has a Void form because of it. Locust Walker can like fade in and out of existence. That could be like a defensive. You could incorporate some kind of like webbing, not webbing, but like wraps kind of thing, which is a big component of the storyline in the expansion or in the patch. So I think some kind of combination between like a Tazavesh brokery thing or an ethereal thing will incorporate itself somehow into the spec. In what way that manifests, I have no idea. But I think in the quest, her talking about like a teacher is like a huge thing. So finally, we come to hero talents. Now, hero talents are weird because most specs, all specs have access to 2. Now, some people are being like, oh, obviously the new spec will get its own. Makes tons of sense, I agree. But some people are saying it will only get a new one, which is, I think, dumb. Or it'll just share the other 2 like Havoc and Vengeance do, which again, I think is pretty dumb and will just break norms for no reason. I think the most realistic answer is that Vengeance will keep Fellsguard and Aldrachi Reaver. It fits with what Vengeance does, right? They have the demon stuff for Fellsguard, and they work well with souls like for Aldrachi Reaver. However, for Havoc, I think they'll keep Fellsguard, but drop Aldrachi Reaver. The reason for that is that souls have always just felt like an afterthought for Havoc. We don't really have any way of interacting with them. We don't really have any way of generating them that well. The only ability that interacts with souls that isn't on either Aldrachi Reaver tree or the Clash tree is Chaos Strike and Demonic Appetite. Otherwise, all of the soul generating and consuming abilities that Havoc has is class side, not spec side. So I think Aldrachi Reaver makes a ton of sense to be removed from Havoc. Now, Havoc does have the glaive stuff, but that is a general universal theme for Demon Hunter. And I think the souls will make a lot more sense for a Void spec, because like we talked about in like the first bit with the boss, the Void is all about consumption, right? It's all about consuming everything for power, taking over everything, making it itself, and like gaining power and size and like destruction from that. And consuming the souls of your enemies for damage or power makes a ton of sense for that kind of thing. Now, I wish they'd rework them or make them work in some way, because I think souls suck. I hate souls. But that's why I think Aldrachi Reaver will fit between Void Spec and Vengeance. Now, the link between Havoc and Void Spec is, I think, in one of 2 ways. One of them I could see, and people might not like this one, is that the link will have some kind of movement-based thing, like some kind of like mastery of the battlefield. You move around, high speeds, whatever. I don't know how that would work, but that is a shared thing I could see. Obviously, Havoc has Fellow Rush. It has the Vengeful Retreat, momentum, inertia stuff that, you know, people love or hate, but it's there. And I could see the Void spec obviously having Void Step, having some of the quick movement stuff that you see in the Ethereals and you see in the Tazavesh Brokers. So it makes some sense for there to be like a unifying thing between those 2, with the, you know, quick movement of Havoc and then the teleportation of Void. I could see that happening, but I also don't know, because like I don't think a lot of people would like that, especially a more, I don't want to say casual audience, but people who don't like the movement around, right? Would not help with that. So I could also see some kind of like cost for power type theme. Now, they already explored this a bit with Fellsguard, but not to a huge amount. But there is, you know, the idea that you are giving yourself up to this destructive power, either Fell or Void, for, you know, damage, for power. You're exposing yourself to dangerous things and consuming like all destructive forces in order to harness them for power. That's explored a bit in Fellsguard, but I think they can differentiate it enough in like some kind of Void Fell fusion here to make it work between the 2. And this would be much more open for design, much less focused on movement abilities, and be something that I think could link the 2. So that's like kind of the 2 ideas for hero talent trees I have. Obviously, it could be something completely different. But that's what I think makes the most sense. All right, yeah. Oh, excuse my voice. So that is it. That's kind of my what could it look like thing. Now I know there's nothing like super concrete here because like I'm a fucking paleontologist. I'm not a game designer. I'm not going to go out here and do this, but there's some ideas I have through research into like what's in the game and what could make sense given the clues we have. Obviously none of this could be right. Maybe we don't even have a void spec. Who knows? We'll find out in a month, but fun thing to do here, obviously. So to recap, I think it'll be a melee spec with spells like Havoc is. It'll have a metaform. It'll share things across specs with like immolation aura, sigils, glaives, part of some kind of void twist, and we'll have like some form of beam. It'll have a dot. It'll have some kind of void step with movement. It'll have the darkness slashes, and then some kind of Tazavesh ethereal influence. And then for a hero talent tree, it'll be something with Havoc with either movement or corruption, and then Aldrachi Reaver with vengeance. And it will not be a healer or a support spec, maybe range, but very, very low chance, like 1 to 2%, I think. So that's what I think. Hope you guys understand my reasoning a bit and where I'm coming from a bit here. Hope this video, I don't know, you found enjoyable and presented in a good way. I tried my best, and I hope you guys are enjoying the lead up to season 3. So we'll find out in about a month if I'm right, if any of us are right, if we're even getting a new spec or not. And I'm very excited for that. Obviously, as soon as that drops, we will have a video going over it and very, very excited fashion. And I hope you guys are just having a good day. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you hate my ideas? Do you wish it was something different? Let me know. And like, comment, subscribe so we can get to 15,000. And with that, I will see you guys on Monday for my next video. So I don't know. Peace. A big thank you to everyone watching my videos, but especially to my channel members. Thank you, Alexander Trifunovic, Rukaza, Fear Redefined, Loose Change, Jorge Polanco, Matthew Barr, Zuligan, Chocobo Merc, Gabriel Correa, Matchman 133, and Falafadar Dark Terror. Thank you so much to everybody. If you want to join and support me in making videos, consider following the link below. I will be adding more perks to this over the summer as I get more time, including log review, which isn't available right now. But again, I do appreciate everybody just supporting me and watching the videos. So I'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Peace.